Hi yogis, welcome back to another episode of Run Yogi Diaries. This is your host Santosh Shiva. I hope you had a wonderful week and you also got some time to play, swim, bike, run, whatever is your thing. Every week I bring you conversations with people who are on a journey of well-being and endurance. I hope they spark some possibility in you, leave you with some tips and perhaps some inspiration to perspire. If you like this channel, consider subscribing to it, hit like if you like this video, and leave your comments below and let us know what you think. This episode is also available on all major podcast platforms if audio is your thing. In the house today, I'm stoked to have someone that has pioneered ultra running for the South Asian community in America. His name is Nattu Natraj, someone who is considered to be the first person of Indian origin to have done the Badwater 135, a grueling foot race in the deserts of California in extreme heat of 135 miles. He and his wife Karen are extremely visible, active, and well-known couple in the area of ultra running. I had Karen on the show about a few episodes back, and if you have not listened to that, check it out. So I'm very glad to have Nattu on the show. We get behind the scenes on his amazing ultra running journey, and hopefully we can take some lessons and inspiration from his journey. Let's dig in. Hey Nattu, welcome to Run Yogi Diaries.
Hi, Santosh. Yeah, it's great to be in talking to you.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So, question about your name, Nattu Natraj. So, what is Nattu?
Nattu is my nickname. Everybody calls me Nattu. My full name is Neliseri Ramachandran Natraj. So, but it's a lot easier
Okay,
to be called Nattu. That's what I've been called since I've been a kid by all my friends. So that's what everybody
okay. So, your
calls
first
me.
name is Ramchandran or is it
No,
Natraj?
Natraj is my first name. Ramachandran is my last name.
Got it, got it.
Yeah.
Okay. But everywhere it's Nattu Natraj. So, it's kind of, I thought
Yeah,
it's Nattu
exactly.
and then Natraj is the
Yeah,
last.
yeah. No, as I was saying, I've made the mistake of transliterating my word the way it is in my Indian passport. So, and my Natraj became my last name. Ramachandran became my
Yeah.
first name. Oh, sorry, Neliseri was my first name, and Ramachandran became my middle name. So my name is all
That
messed up.
that is that is very common among South Indians in America.
Yeah, exactly.
That probably happens to 9 out of 10 South Indians in America because there are 4 or 5, characters in a name, or not characters, words in a name. So
Yeah,
nobody knows which is the first, which is the name of the village, which is the name of the family, and actually what's the name of the person. So
exactly, exactly.
it's all good. It's all
I should
good.
have stuck with NR Natraj, which was basically my name when I was in India. So
Okay.
that would
Yeah, yeah.
that would have
We all
made
use
things
initials in India.
yeah, exactly. Uh,
All right. So, Natu, such a pleasure having you. I heard of your name when I was talking to many other wonderful ultra athletes from the Bay Area, and your name got dropped every now and then, and you were referred to as one of the pioneers in from a South Asian perspective to be running ultras in the West Coast. So, I'm sure you're one of those few brown guys out there running ultras. So quite visible.
yeah. I mean, I remember early on when I started running ultras, I used to be one of the few brown guys doing ultras. I used to live in Colorado when I started running ultras in near Boulder, Colorado. And I got introduced to some really good ultra runners that were experienced, and that's how my ultra running experience started. Be
Yeah,
interested.
and we're gonna get into all of that.
Yeah,
We're gonna get into all of that. But before that, let me kind of give our audience a sense of
sure.
who you are, right? So Um, Natu, you have, I saw Ultra sign up. You have like some 150 plus, 157 Ultras to your credit. So you're kind of really accomplished, been at it for a long time. You also, I think, are the first person of Indian origin, or maybe an Indian, to run the Badwater 135, which is an extremely challenging race. And we're gonna, like you were just talking about it, we're gonna get into the backstory there. Of course, to your credit, you also have Western States and many other 100 milers to your credit. You also have done the Marathon Des Sables, another, challenging, what, 260, 251 miles ultra over in the Saharas in Morocco. So we'll also get into that. That's another fascinating adventure you've done. And you're a technologist by profession.
Yes.
Live in California. I guess that's a quick overview of your wonderful background in the world of ultras, right?
That is
Did I
correct.
miss
Yeah.
something?
No, you kind of captured my basic experience and what I've done till now. Yeah. Yeah, I've been
Terrific.
doing it for many years. In fact, I started, I think, doing ultras sometime in 2003, maybe.
Mm,
I was training for a marathon, road marathon, and I kept getting injured with shin splints, and I struggled with that for quite some time, actually, a couple of years. Fortunately, at that time, I was living in Boulder, which is a mecca for running, whether it is road running or trail running. So I had some good physical therapists take a look at me, and they recommended that I do more dirt running, so trail running primarily. So that's when I transitioned over from um, trying to do fast road marathons to trail running to build my leg strength and also get
nice.
my shin issue resolved. Because when you're running trails, especially around Boulder, it's quite hilly. So you end up hiking most of the uphills and then running the downhills. So that naturally helped you build your leg strength, which then helped me actually transition over back to road marathons whenever I decided I wanted to get fast and do a fast road marathon. So that's basically
Mm,
how my foray into ultra running started. Fortunately, at the same time, I also read the book by Kirk Johnson, uh,
mm,
which which kind of piqued my interest. I'm always up for new challenges, or at least I used to be up for a lot of new challenges, and go headlong into new challenges, but also try to research enough of what I'm getting into to know what I'm getting into. So
yeah.
when I read the book, I got introduced to Lisa Smith Batchen through the book, and I reached out to her
Mm,
to get some help from her in terms of having somebody with a lot of experience that could guide me through training for these ultra marathons. So
mm.
that's where it all started.
So prior to that, right? Were you always an active kid growing up? I mean, was your
Yeah,
childhood very active?
yeah, I used to be pretty active. You know how you get back from school and then you go out and play. I used to play soccer with tennis balls barefoot. So
Soccer with tennis balls.
yeah,
That's
with
the first time I've heard that.
barefoot back in India in dirt, right? So I was always active, but then once you get into college and then academics takes over. Even
Yeah.
when I was in college, I used to run long distances just on a whim.
Mm,
One fine day, I decided I wanted to run from my hostel to the gate in IIT Madras. So I did that back and forth a few times. So I
mm,
used to run. But then when I came to the US, the focus was essentially trying to get my PhD. And once I
mm,
got my PhD and moved to Boulder, then I had a little bit more time to explore all the outdoorsy stuff. And I used to do a lot of hiking before I actually started running and training for marathons and ultra marathons. So that basically also piqued my interest because I used to be on trails and saw people running by really fast. Like, oh, maybe this is what I can do as well. I get from
Yeah.
point A to point B faster. All those kind of helped me get into ultramarathons.
Nice. It seems like there was an innate interest in being active and running and being playing soccer, running in. So that was always there. It was just that it had subdued, and then it kind of sparked off once you saw the beautiful trails and you had some time in hand, right?
That's exactly how it evolved.
Right,
And
right.
once, like I said, I'm always up for a challenge, and the curiosity of what a challenge entails is
Yeah,
what got me and keeps me going in ultramarathons because no two ultramarathons are the same. There's always some challenge
yeah.
that you're trying to troubleshoot and fix. And that is what keeps me kind of engaged, both in the training as well as wanting to do more ultramarathons.
Yeah, surely. And choosing to do the Badwater 135 um, is is more than just a challenge. It's a completely insane adventure that you chose to do. So let's hear about that. How did that idea even get you know conceived?
Yeah. So when I read Kirk Johnson's book, um, it basically chronicled his experience or the training, his experience trying to get into bad water, train for bad water, and actually doing bad water. Right.
Hmm.
And that basically piqued my interest as to this seems like a pretty big challenge. Maybe this is
Hmm.
something that I'm capable of doing. I didn't know I was capable of doing it, but unless you try it, you'll never find it. So I read the book and I contacted Lisa Smith Batchen.
Right.
She's a pretty well-known ultramarathoner. And I contacted her and asked her if she'd be willing to coach me, and I'm interested in doing bad water. So deciding that I want to do bad water and actually doing bad water, it's you have to qualify for it. You got to get selected. You have to apply for it. You got to get selected. So in order to qualify for it, I had to basically show that I am capable of running in the heat without having any health issues. So essentially, that basically meant that I had to do a few things ahead of time. One is do a race in a hot weather environment to show that you're capable of doing it. And that's why I ended up doing Marathon Des Sables even before bad
Okay.
water. And
Hmm.
then you also have to um, have, I mean, that basically would qualify you for that. But you also need to show that you're capable of running long distances because Marathon des Sables, although it's a really hard race, it's a stage race.
Hmm.
You do 20 to 30 miles per day, except for one day, which is about 50 miles or so, right? So it's a stage race. You carry all your own food. It's in the Sahara Desert in Morocco. So it is really hot out there. And you don't have any other support other than getting water at the checkpoints that you run
Hmm.
along the thing. So no ice, no nothing to cool you down. You rely on the water in bottles that are pretty hot, and you run through sand dunes and all the terrain, the desert terrain that you typically see. So that kind of, I did Marathon des Sables, and I got hooked in running in the heat and the desert. Kind
Hmm.
of desert terrain is something that really fascinates me.
What
So
about it? What about it fascinates you?
it's just the barrenness of the desert, the vastness of the
Hmm.
desert. Just kind of fascinates me. Um, so I,
Like an ocean, like almost being in the ocean from a
yeah,
water
exactly,
point of
yeah,
view, just like
yeah.
hmm.
Yeah, I mean, not everybody likes that kind of a terrain, right? I mean, there's nothing really interesting for people to see, but the desert changes as the day progresses as well. So that's also fascinating to see. and experience. So those are all the things that kind of got me interested in it.
So I mean, is it like a? I mean, this is a very interesting choice, right? It's not like everyone who's running is choosing to run in these kind of hot
Right.
conditions. Badwater. You started with Badwater, and then Marathon Des Sables kind of became a enabler to go to Badwater.
Right.
And these are definitely conditions that are beyond normal human living. It's not like
Mm-hmm.
humans are living in those kind of conditions. So, is that something that you were always fascinated by, desert? I mean, what, or was it like a whim? It
No, it
just
was
it just
mostly a
stuck to you.
whim and a challenge.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, so, like I said, I'm really curious
Hmm.
about things. And when I read the book and I talked to Lisa, she suggested that I do Marathon des Sables. And I
Hmm.
researched more about Marathon des Sables, and it looked like, oh, this will be a really good challenge because you have to plan, because you have to plan your calories for 5 days, 5 to 6 days in the desert, right? So there is a lot of
Hmm.
logistics involved in planning. You'll also have to figure out um, how you're going to pack those calories because you're going to carry all that stuff with you for all those days. In addition
Hmm.
to having your change of socks, maybe change of clothing, and all that stuff, right? So it's not just the act of running in the desert, it's the act of running
Right.
in the desert plus all the other logistical challenges that you have to
Hmm.
be aware of and be prepared for. So that seemed like a really good challenge to undertake. And Lisa was very helpful in guiding me and a few other friends through how to go about doing it. So, yeah, one of the things that happened in Marathon des Sables, which I, in hindsight, was pretty stupid, is I ended up running the race in a sleeveless t-shirt, and I don't use sunblock.
Wow.
And the second day, I was sunburned on both my
Ouch.
arms, and third day it blistered.
Oh.
And the fourth day, I think was the fourth day is the long day where you do about 50 miles, and they give you, I think, like 18 or maybe 24 hours to do the 50 miles. And then when I was putting on my pack, all the blisters were sheared off. So I
Ooh.
had to deal with that as well. So that was uh, unexpected because I didn't expect the sun to be so hot. Because you really can't experience that heat in the US until you go to Death Valley or some of the other places later in the summer, right? Marathon des
Hmm.
Sables is typically around April. And really, there is no place, at least in the US, where it's that hot that early. So I was inexperienced with that kind of stuff, and I
So
paid
how
the.
did you deal with that? Was it painful?
Oh yeah, it was quite
Blisters.
quite quite painful. I just had to be careful to make sure that it didn't get infected.
Hmm.
And then it's just a matter of sucking it up and just putting one foot in front of another and moving forward. It worked out fine in the end. But
Right.
that was one of the big mistakes that I made in Marathon des Sables. That was a big learning experience. From that point on, whenever I do races in the heat, I'm always wearing full sleeve
Hmm.
white shirt. Uh, so the advantage of wearing a full sleeve white shirt is, of course, it's white, so the heat isn't as bad as it. But also wearing a full sleeve, you can pour water on your sleeves as well as the shirt
Hmm.
itself, and the cooling effect from the evaporation really helps that. So
So that's a hack. That's a
that's a hack,
hack
yeah,
to stay cool. That's a
yeah,
hack to stay cool in heat, huh?
yeah,
Okay. So
exactly,
that
yeah,
explains why everybody wears full sleeves, because a lot of us who are not necessarily used to running in that kind of heat are always wondering, why wouldn't you be, least clothed, right? But that explains it. That
yep,
explains why you don't.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Yeah, so Marathon des Sables was a really good experience for me because that basically set the stage for essentially my ultra running career, so to say. Because that gave me the confidence that I can deal with the heat quite well and also deal with any other things that are thrown my way during the course of any race. right? So ultramarathons is running ultramarathons is mostly mental. Physically, anybody is capable of doing it as long as you've trained a little bit, right? Ultimately, finishing an ultramarathon comes down to how mentally strong you are to not want to quit when things go when things get hard, right? So it's I would say most of ultra marathon is mental, especially when you get past the 100K to the 100-mile mark. It gets to be
Okay.
very mental.
Fascinating. So the Marathon Des Sables itself, right? So do you, is there like a, do you, from a logistics point of view, flying from here, you just fly into Morocco, and is there somebody who handles all of it for you, or
Yeah,
you have to pretty much do it yourself?
Lisa and her husband Jay, they were the people that were the reps for Marathon des Sables in the US.
Okay.
So they basically organize everything. You pay the entry fee, and then Jay was really good at organizing all the flight tickets, getting all the people together, and then basically having workshops and training camps to show people how to pack, what to take, etc., etc. You want to pack as little as possible, but at the same time have enough calories for you to survive through the 6 days in the desert. And so you fly into Morocco. You fly into a place called Ouarzazate. That's where some of the movies get shot, the Western movies get shot. I'm not a movie buff, so I don't know exactly what movies were filmed there, but
Okay.
you go to Ouarzazate, and then they bus you into the desert from there. You camp overnight the first night, and then the second day is when the race starts. And then every day, they basically break down camp. You run the section for that day, and they set up the camp on the other side. So the camp is essentially a tarp with some rugs on the floor. That's it. So that's where you're sleeping at night. You carry a sleeping pad, blow up pillows, and some people just use their backpack as a pillow. And when you finish the stage, you cook your food, eat your food, and go to bed early because it gets pretty chilly at night in the desert as well. So it's
Okay.
not just dealing with the heat during the day. You also need to be prepared to deal with the cold at night because it gets cold in the desert at night. So you have to carry some stuff for that as well. So overall, it was a really good experience for me. I still cherish the time I spent there. Typically, the camps are organized by country, so everybody that came from the U.S. Typically stays together. So
Okay.
I had a few friends running the race the same year I was running it, so we knew each other from the U.S. itself. But then it was good to meet
Okay.
other people from the U.S. that were doing the race as well. So it was fun. Yeah,
Nice. And any chance of getting lost in the desert?
nah, it's really hard to get lost. Even
Okay.
the long stage, you run through the night, or at least I had to run through the night. And the course is marked really well. There is no chance. I mean,
Okay.
although there are stories of people getting lost, it's really difficult to get lost because it's marked so well.
Nice. And training for an event like Marathon Des Sables, right? What are we talking about? Are we talking about like 50 miles a week, 60 miles a week?
Yeah,
How
I,
many
I was
hours
never
of
a high mileage trainer. Most of my weeks are on the 40 to 50 miles. I mean, I don't have very high expectations on how fast I'm going to run, right? And for me, it's the experience of training for a race and actually doing the race. Doing the race is the icing on the cake, right? So I am a low mileage ultra runner, so to say. 40, most of my high mileage weeks are either race weeks or training race weeks. Right? I do a lot of
Okay.
races primarily as training for longer races, right? So you do a 50K as a training for a 50 miler, do a 50 miler as a training for 100K, and so on, right? So that's
Makes
why
sense.
you'll see that I do a lot of races, most of them are not really races for me. They are basically keeping me honest to do the training, to spend the time on my feet to be able to do longer distances.
Yeah.
But for Marathon Des Sables, the one thing that I did do differently was run with a weighted backpack. Right, so you put some rocks in a backpack and then either run outside or on a treadmill so that you can get used to running with weight in your back. So that's one thing I had done.
Interesting. That's a good input there as well. Not to like I think the general myth about ultra running and long distance running is that you need to put a lot of miles per week. Uh, but you can like you've done, you can still enjoy the process and still do these long distance running races, doing 40-50 miles a week,
Yep.
which
Yeah.
is a lot more manageable from a
Right.
if you're looking at a job and family and other obligations, you're not out there just doing running.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And during the bulk of my training for Badwater, I was also traveling a lot for work.
Hmm.
So that's another thing. It's like you just have to find some treadmill and a gym to go run. I remember while training for Badwater, since I was traveling a lot, I used to train over the weekend, catch a red eye flight to New York, um, go to the office, sleep in the office, go to the gym, shower, and then work all day on Monday, and then go back to the hotel, get some early sleep, and then start my Tuesday when my training used to begin. Training in the treadmill is what I did mostly, since I was
Wow.
traveling so much, and then fly back Friday night. And then, fortunately, I had a few friends that were really helpful in getting me out and doing some trail running as training for Badwater. But in many cases, I used to just go to the Boulder Reservoir and then run there with a lot of layers on in order to get used to being uncomfortable in the heat. Right? So that was my training for Badwater. And then I also used to spend time in the sauna. Coming closer to the race, spend more time in the sauna. So there was a gym close to where I lived. So I used to, 2 weeks before the race, go into the sauna with a few bottles of ice water and then try to sit there. Just sit there. I wasn't exercising or anything. Some people even exercise inside the sauna, but I was just sitting there, just reading something or trying to get my body used to being in the heat for that long, and also trying to get my body used to absorbing fluids at a much higher rate than what you would normally do when you're running. So,
Interesting. Fascinating. It's so interesting, right? To think of these very race specific, environment specific training and how the body actually adapts to all of it.
yep.
It's just amazing. So zooming into the Badwater itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
This was what you did it in 2006.
Yeah,
2006,
2006
right?
was the first time I did it.
First
However,
time you
in
did it, and
2005, one of the things when you apply for Badwater, they want you to have some experience having been there, so you know what you're getting into. So in 2005, I went and crewed, thanks to Lisa's help, I went and crewed Monica Scholes. She used to be a really, really good ultramarathoner. She's won Badwater a few times, and among other races. So I went and crewed her. So I spent time on the course in Badwater, Furnace Creek, Stovepipe Pulse. So I kind of knew what I was getting into and had a feel for how hot it was going to be and what I need to do to prepare. So that was basically my introduction. That was my first time in Badwater when I crewed Monica Shoals. And then for the 2006 race, I did go there and train on the course. I had a friend who came and helped me crew. So I ran from Badwater all the way through to stovepipe wells uh, as a training run, just so that I can get used to what it's going to feel like. So started at the same time I would have started the race and ran all the way through. That's about 40 some miles in the middle of the day before you start climbing up Towns Pass, which is a 5,000 feet climb over 18 miles. But I didn't do that piece. The next day, I did a few miles up the climb just so that I can see what it's like. But the really toughest part in Badwater is from Badwater all the way through to the top of Towns Pass. So I just did the part all the way to Stovepipe Wells until you start going up to Towns Pass. But that kind of gave me an idea of how difficult or how hard it's going to be and what I need to be prepared for. So it also helped me experiment with hydration, how much I should be drinking, etc. So that was a good experience training on the course itself. 2006, I had a crew I used to be part of a marathon running bulletin board. And I had a crew of primarily marathoners. Nobody had run any ultras. So it was kind of a rookie runner with a kind of a rookie crew. Nobody had any experience crewing ultra marathons. But, these are all people, adults that can research and figure out how to crew effectively. And I had a great time with that group. It took me more than 46 hours to finish, primarily because I was just not experienced in the distance itself. Before I did Badwater, the farthest I had run was I did a 24-hour run, and I did like 100 and some miles. So that was my longest. So I hadn't been on my feet more than 24 hours, and I've never been past little over 100 miles. So it was really tough. Just the heat and the cumulative effect of being out in the heat for so long gets to you, especially the second day. And that's what got me. But then I went back. So 2006, I did it for the first time. 2007, I crewed a friend who helped me. 2008 and 9, I went back and did them again. So just because I had the experience and I wanted to see how much faster I can run. Yeah.
So tell me, obviously, when you share this, you share it as like a matter of fact, and but this is a grueling, race mentally and physically for anybody who's listening to this. So I'm sure you went through a lot of spaces. How does something like this change you? I mean, does your perspective about life change when you do something as hard as and demanding and tough as this?
You gain confidence in yourself, right? That's one. I wouldn't say I had any life-changing experiences when I was out there in Badwater, but it made me tough in the sense that I don't give up easily. Right? That used to be the case, not anymore. These days, I am more of it's like, if I'm not having fun, I'm going to not go any further. I'm that kind of a person now. But, those days I used to basically go through tough stuff just so that I know that I can come out on the other side feeling good. So it just, you start believing in your abilities more and more the more you do.
So what drives that? Like, is that something where you're trying to prove something to yourself, or what drives you to do something like that and not give up? Especially when there is nothing at stake, like this is something you're not getting paid money for this. Your job is not at stake. You're just doing this out of your own will.
Yeah.
So what gives you that kind of motivation?
Well, those days I wanted to see everything that I started to the finish, right? So that was my motivation. It's a couple of things. Badwater is not a cheap race to do, right? The entry fee is really high. When I ask somebody to crew me, I pay for all their expenses. This includes their airfare. This includes their lodging in Badwater. And then you have to rent cars, rent vans. You have to buy all the food, and then you have to pay for all the food. So it's not a cheap thing to do. So I have some obligation to finish those races because there are people that are giving up part of their life to come and help me finish the race. So I had a sense of obligation to finish it. So that's one reason I never DNF'd in Badwater. I've done it 3 times. I finished it 3 times. But you'll see the other races, I do DNF quite often, especially these days, primarily because I don't have the same level of motivation to finish races anymore. Because I've gotten older, and also I have other issues that I never used to have. For example, my stomach never went south during any of these 100 milers. These days, invariably, my stomach gives out 12 to 15 hours into a race, and that puts a damper in the enjoyment of actually trying to finish the race, because you got to constantly troubleshoot and nothing works. And after sometimes, like, really, I can't eat anything, I can't drink anything. There's no point in continuing because I'm just going to do more damage to myself than just continuing and trying to finish it. So.
Right.
But, the challenge and the obligation to finish, because I have asked a bunch of people to give up their time to come and help me.
Fascinating. I mean, it's always very fascinating to look at the psychological background of how, we tend to take on voluntarily difficult projects, right? And when this just because it's more of self fulfillment or self realization, it's got there are no incentives, at least obvious incentives like money or fame or any of that, right? You're just doing it because you said you'll do it.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. It's, there's no money or fame involved, and that's what I tell people is like, I pay to do this stuff. Nobody pays me to do this stuff. So if I'm not having fun, I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
So,
and also the idea of fun, right? Because you're dealing with pain, and you're dealing with it's not pleasure. And so fun in this context is something else. It's like, maybe would it be kind of maybe satisfaction, or
it is
maybe a sense of
it's satisfaction, number one. And number two is, if you run into issues, are you able to troubleshoot and fix issues and come out of the other end feeling better, right? So it's a kind of a satisfaction of finishing something, but also satisfaction of being able to troubleshoot and solve problems on the go.
Right. And you also talked about how that has changed over the years, right? From then to now, and of course you factor that to maybe physiological changes as you get older. But is it also because as we get older, we have less incentive to prove, in the sense that, hey, take me as I am. I'm not here to prove anything. I'm going to just do what I like to do. You think is that too?
Yeah, part of it is that, for sure. At least in my case, is really, I have nothing else to prove. But sometimes I regret not continuing on. My issue is, like I said, my stomach goes south at night, 12 to 15 hours into the race. And I've invariably, if I can kind of push myself through the night, I start feeling better the next day. I just haven't gotten over the hurdle of, once my stomach goes south, convincing myself to just push through the night to be able to get to the next morning. Because typically in a 100 miler, the daybreak brings you new energy. It's a body cycle as well, right? I mean, at night, your body expects to be sleeping, so it's not trained to consume and digest and absorb calories, right? come in the morning, your body wakes up and it's ready to continue on doing that stuff. So that's where I've had a hurdle recently, the last few years actually, where once my stomach goes south, I just don't have the motivation to continue through the night, knowing that come the next morning, I'll start feeling better and I'll be able to run
Right.
better in the morning.
Right.
Yeah. Previously,
Absolutely.
when I was younger, I used to basically do exactly that. And although my stomach didn't go south, I typically have a lot of sleep issues during the night. So sometimes I would just pull over and sleep on the trail, just so that I can just shut my eyes and get my body to kind of relax a little bit because it's been moving for so long. That really helps reset my system so that I can come next morning, I'm able to do better. So,
Yeah, makes sense. And so Badwater, Marathon Des Sables, but you also have done a whole bunch of other ultras, including Western states,
yep.
and which is a prestigious 100 miler for anyone who's in the 100 miler, pursuit.
Yep.
So
Yeah, Western
how's that been
states
for
is.
you?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was saying, how was that for you?
Yeah, Western states was hard. Let's put it that way. I mean, the first time I did it was, I think, 2013 was the first time I did it. I used to live in Sacramento. I moved to the Bay Area around 2009, 8, 9. And then I moved to Sacramento. So used to train on the course quite a bit. That's used to be our weekend training, basically on Western States Trail. So I was really well trained in 2013, and again, my stomach went south at night. Although I wasn't particularly throwing up, it just my stomach was so sour that I just couldn't run the runnable part of the course. I mean, Western States is hard all the way to 62 miles. After that, there's a lot of downhill to flat to rolling running. So if you have the legs, when you get to Forest Hill, which is 62 miles, you really can make up a lot of time in that section. Unfortunately, both times I lost my stomach when the easy part, quote unquote, the easy part of the course was in front of me. So both times I had same issues, and I finished within 5 minutes of my finish time, even though I was 5 years older. 5 years later in 2018. But overall, both years that I ran, it was really hot. So since I was really, I like running in the heat, I enjoy the heat. Both years I did reasonably fine. Heat never bothered me. What happened in 2018 was I finished the race. I hadn't eaten anything for, I think, the last 25 miles. I just had a few crackers because my stomach was still sour, just drinking water and crackers. I was dehydrated when I finished, and I had some issues after I finished. And then I went for a run that weekend because I was planning on doing the Grand Slam, which is the 4 oldest 100-milers in the US. So I went for a run just to shake out my legs, and I had a heat stroke on the trail. Somehow I was able to get myself back home, but I thought I was going to pass out and die on the trail because it was so hot. I left home without any water. Fortunately, since I knew the trails around here really well, I was able to find a trail that was more flat, so I wasn't getting overheated, and I slowly made my way back home. And since then, I have had a hard time running in the heat. So I don't know whether it's mental or physical. I think it's a combination of both. But my tolerance for running in the heat has gone down quite significantly since 2018 because of that.
And anything else other than Western states in your ultra, anything else that comes to mind that's a highlight for you?
Yeah, for me, finishing Hurt 100 in Hawaii, that's probably the hardest race I've done so far. And I've started it 7 times, I've finished it once. So
really,
yeah, it's it's a 20-mile. You do 20 miles 5 times, and it's hot, it's humid, and it's really rocky, and there are a lot of roots, and it's really slippery. So
Okay.
you have to be really careful. And it has 25,000 feet of climbing and 25,000 feet of descent in the 100 miles. So you can imagine
Wow.
how, in the heat, how hard it is. And at night, the trails are pretty slick and slippery. So you have to be really careful. So
Mm.
you're not moving, at least I wasn't moving very fast. So by far, the hardest race for me was Hurt 100. And that's probably one of the races that I'm proud of finishing, in addition to some of the Badwater and other things like that. But Badwater
Wow.
is a lot easier in the sense that you get to see your crew every mile because they're following you a mile or 2 miles. They're following you in a van. So, really, if you have a good crew and you have good protocol established with the crew, it's really difficult to get um, way too dehydrated, right? Because
Mm.
the way I used to instruct my crew is every time I saw them or every hour, I used to get weighed, right? So best way to
Okay.
know if you're getting dehydrated is, are you losing too much weight, right?
Mm.
So, and then you basically have every 2 miles, if something is not working from a food perspective, you have a lot of options, right? You
Mm.
can try different things and get it work. You don't have that luxury when you're doing a trail run, right? Because the aid stations
Mm.
are at very set distances and they have only
Right.
certain things that are available there, right? So that's why trail races are harder than something like Badwater. But Badwater has its own difficulty in terms of the heat.
Right. Interesting. That's a great point. And in terms of your food choices in general in these kind of races, um, do you what do you do? You pack your own food, or any
Yeah, I
customization
used
based on?
to, early on when I did Badwater, I used to puree rice with yogurt and ginger and a little bit of jalapeno and a lot of salt. I used to
Hmm.
puree them and then I'll
So
ask my.
pureed tair sadam.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Pureed thair sadam. That's exactly right. And then I'll ask my. The problem with that is, although when you make it, it's really liquidy. As it sits,
Hmm.
it gets really solid, right? So I'll ask
Okay.
my crew to take a few scoops of that, put it in water, shake it up, and give it to me. So
Hmm.
that's what I did in Badwater. On top of that, during the day, I always had gels or
Hmm.
electrolyte drink. I think at that time, Succeed was a drink that I used to, and then augment it with salt caps. That's what I was doing at that time. Yeah, these days, like I said, I've been trying different things. I haven't found something that works really well for me yet. But
Hmm.
the stuff that works really well for me, at least during the daytime, is gels. I primarily like
Hmm.
goo gels. They work really well for me. I can feel immediate. I can feel my legs getting life as soon as I have a goo. Within a few minutes, I can feel like,
Hmm.
oh, I'm able to run now. But then if I have too much of that, come 12, 15 hours, my stomach goes sour. So for anything under 50 miles, maybe 100 Ks, I can survive mostly on goo gels or electrolyte drinks just by themselves, no
Okay.
solid food. But beyond that, yeah, I'll have some solid food. These days, I make some rice again, rice with ghee and ginger
Hmm.
with salt.
Right.
And then I pack it, and then I just rip it open and eat it on the trail.
Okay.
Or I try aid station food like quesadillas and stuff like that. So that's
Yeah,
basically,
makes sense.
yeah. It's evolved over time, but it hasn't evolved as much over time. Let's put it that way. Even though my stomach doesn't behave the same. I mean, some of my friends used to say that I had a iron stomach because I could eat anything and run. Not anymore. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
remember there's a race in Keys, goes from Key Largo to Key West.
Uh-huh.
The race director is a good friend of mine, and we did a kind of a trial run for the race from Key Largo to Key West. And I remember we went to a Chinese restaurant to grab some fried rice, and I ate the fried rice as we were running. So I used to have an iron stomach, not anymore.
Okay, I hope your stomach feels better.
Yeah.
Maybe get back to pureed tair sadam. It should fix it.
Yeah, that's what that I might do that actually. I tried the ghee and rice with ginger and salt. That helps, but it's not as
Hmm.
effective. Maybe I should just try that again. I saw them back, go back to basics,
Yeah,
so to say.
yeah, because the probiotic
Yeah,
effect, right?
exactly.
This time, so I was in India for like 2 weeks, and every time I go to India, obviously we love to eat a
Right.
lot. Food intake goes up, and we're all so excited looking at so many food options. And sooner or later, after about 4 days, your stomach,
Go south.
says hello, I need rest, go south. But what I've been doing recently, and this time I did it, is that to make sure religiously have yogurt
Yeah.
at the end of every meal, right? Have tair at the end of every meal.
Yep.
And guess what? My stomach was absolutely fine this
Oh,
time, and I
good.
and I ate all kind of stuff I wanted. But make sure that you end it
With
with
that.
some curd, some
Yeah.
yogurt, and the stomach thanks you for that because
Yeah.
of the probiotic. The microbiome just thanks you for that.
Yeah.
So
Maybe I'll try that in my next 100 miler in September. That's probably what I'll
yeah,
do.
yes, let's brand it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nattu
Yeah.
Sadam.
Yeah. So fortunately, the race I'm planning on doing is Magian Monster, which is in Arizona,
Wow.
and we have a place not too far from there, so I can actually
Hmm.
stay home and make all this stuff and actually use it in the race. I don't have to make it ahead of time and um, carry it in my baggage in the flight,
Yeah.
etc. So
Terrific. So, in terms of overall, strength and mobility and well-being, to be equipped to do these kind of races regularly, is there something you do that you think our audience can take away?
yeah, I mean, you need to enjoy doing
Hmm.
this stuff, right? Um, if it becomes a chore to go out and train,
Hmm.
you're not going to enjoy it anymore, and you really wouldn't want to do it. So first and foremost, you need to enjoy the experience of training, even though
Hmm.
the race is the icing on the cake. You shouldn't be focused too much on the race itself, right? You need
Right.
to experience the training and enjoy the training part to get to the race.
Right.
It's the first and foremost thing. The other thing is just, especially as you get older, I'm finding that
Hmm.
I've lost a lot of my core strength. I used to be able
Hmm.
to go run without doing any of weight training or improving my core strength. Never had any issues. I'm finding
Hmm.
more and more that since I don't have as much core strength, I really have to work on those kinds of things that are not really running per se, but auxiliary stuff that makes your running better. So
Right.
that's another thing. Weight training and core work are a couple of things. I'm not good at it. I'm
Hmm.
slowly coming to the realization that without that, I'm going to have a tough time in some of these races because the races I do these days they have a lot of climbing. So
Hmm.
you really need to have a really good core to be able to do the climbing through the day, into the night, and the next day, right?
Hmm.
So that's the realization I'm coming to now.
Nice. And what about have I see a lot of people doing the 200 plus mile races these days, the Cocodonas and all
Right.
that stuff. Is that something that has interested you?
Yeah, it's interested me. I've been talking to Karen about doing Cocodona, and maybe next year,
Nice.
the year after, we'll surely consider doing it because we live in Flag. We spend part of our time in Flagstaff,
Right.
so it's convenient to train on the. In fact, this year We did Crown King 50K, which is kind of, it's not exactly on the Cocodona course, but somewhere Cocodona goes through Crown King. So we got to see some of that trails and how horrendously bad Arizona trails can be. Compared to California trails, Arizona trails are a few orders of magnitude more technical. So
Wow.
it's like, for instance, we did a 15 or 16-mile run around Flagstaff, around Eldon, and it took us like 6.5 hours to do that because the trails are in really terrible shape because it's still early in the season for people to go and clear the trails. So we are climbing over trees, we are post holing in the snow. It's like it's just, you can't get a good running rhythm going in Arizona trails, especially the technical trails. So I can see, both of us, Karen and I, have been thinking about at least doing one or two 200 milers just to see what it is. Um, so I'm sure we will do it. Maybe next year, the year after. I don't know when.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's
Nice.
such a different challenge because
Yeah.
it's not just being out there for a long time. You also have to plan around the logistics of your drop bag. If you don't have a crew, you have to plan around when you're going to sleep. I mean, you have to sleep. There is no two ways about it. And your nutrition plan is very different from doing shorter races, right? Because you need to rely a lot more on solid food for those for being out for such a long time. So you're relying a lot more on solid foods. So there's a lot of differences that I think it's going to take some learning for us to figure out how to do those kinds of races.
Terrific. Well, we wish you all the best in whatever you're up to, 200 milers and all those technical, you know, mountainous runs that you're trying to look at next. And hopefully your stomach comes back because of the Thai sadam. I will hope for that.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that. That'll be the next thing I'm going to try.
Yeah, terrific. So good. Hey, we did cover a fair bit of ground in your journey, and thanks for sharing with us the backstory of what you do and how you do it. The last part of our podcast is a fun Q&A round, and I have a few questions that I ask my guests for
Sure.
fun. So you ready for that?
Yep, go ahead.
The first one, which is my favorite question, is I know we talk about food a lot. What's your favorite junk food?
My favorite junk food, I buy a lot of mixture, different kinds of mixture from the Indian store, and I eat
Yeah.
them. My favorite junk food is all Indian junk food. I don't have any favorite junk food here from that specific just to the US. I go to the Indian store and I buy all kinds of junk food
Yeah.
like ribbon pakoda and mixture and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So that's what I
Yeah.
snack on in the afternoon when I'm hungry. So that's my favorite
Nice.
junk food.
Love it. Love it. I love mixture. Mixture fans club. Okay. Okay. So this is a common phrase that we hear is that, you are what you eat. So I want you to rewrite that phrase and say, and fill in whatever you think comes to your mind. You are, what you dash. What would come to your mind?
You are what you are. Let's see. Yeah, in my case, you are what motivates you.
Hmm. You are what
So
what your motivations. Okay.
yeah,
Hmm.
so without
Interesting. Yeah.
motivation, you can't do things. You need that
Yeah.
motivation
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. Yeah. Uh, a food that you hate.
I'll eat anything, but I can't think of anything that I really hate.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean,
You believe in equality of foods.
yeah, exactly. If there is one thing, I would say food that doesn't have any spice, I don't like.
Uh,
It needs to be spice. So
yeah.
I'm always putting some chaat masala in something or getting some powder and putting it on stuff so that it has some spice in it. I can't
Yeah.
stand bland stuff.
Bland food. Yeah, yeah. Got it. So, you've been running in the wild for so long. Any animal or reptile encounter?
Well, I run into a lot of rattlesnakes around here, but I haven't had any bad experiences with that. I've been kind of fortunate. I hear them and see them before I actually come upon them. The only thing that happened was I was doing Wasatch 100. I think it was 2017. I think, and I didn't even realize this. This was in the middle of the night. I was on the trail, and people behind me. I was by myself. Um, I try not to use pacers in some of these races, so I was doing it all by
Mm.
myself. Karen was crewing me. I was on the trail. I didn't realize there was a moose right next to the trail. I went right past it
Wow.
and didn't even realize it. And the people behind me basically said they had to stop because the moose wasn't happy that we were in that area. So I
Wow.
didn't even realize that the moose was there, and I just kept going. And I was at the next aid station, and these people came in and said, "Hey, did you realize there was a moose on the trail that you just went by, and it was really close to you?" I said, "No, I didn't realize it." So these are things that happened that I wasn't even aware of. So
Right.
I've been fortunate that I haven't had any bad wildlife encounters so far. So that's good.
Hmm. Interesting. And my last one is, what do you like to do when you're not running? What else are you passionate about?
I work a lot, and
Hmm.
then I run a lot, and then I spend time with my family. Karen,
Hmm.
Karen and I are always out doing something. We are training, running together. I used to bike a lot as well with her, but I haven't done a lot of
Hmm.
biking recently. In fact, she complains all the time that I don't do a lot of biking with her.
Hmm.
But spending just time with family and just hanging out. I do work a lot, run, especially in the weekends, run a lot. And then I do take a lot of naps too, because that helps me
Okay.
recover faster. So,
Right. Right. Right.
and then I enjoy cooking as well. So I make Indian food.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So,
Any particular uh, brand of Indian food that you make that you
well, I
like to
do
cook?
avial, pongal and
Avial.
avial. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite. Pongal avial, and then I make dal and sambar and all that
Nice.
stuff.
Nice.
Especially when my
It's
son
awesome.
visits, I make that for them.
Very nice. Yeah. Cooking is very therapeutic.
Yep, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can get it right, it's therapeutic for others too.
That's exactly right. That's right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Natu, we're kind of there was a great conversation. We learned a few more things in the Q&A about you, and thanks for sharing that. We're kind of coming to close here. Before we wrap up, any final last word to our audience before we wrap up?
Yeah, I would say if you want this, if this conversation piqued your interest on doing ultra marathons, it's not difficult. Ultra
Hmm.
marathons, physically, yes, you need to train for it. However, doing ultra marathons is more mental than physical. So you
Hmm.
just need to um, enjoy the experience of training, and the race is just a icing on the cake. If you look at it that
Hmm.
way, then you can do anything you put your mind to.
Yeah. Wonderful. Wonderful.
Yeah,
Natu, thanks a lot.
thank you for having me, and it has been a great pleasure chatting with you, reliving some of my experiences from the past. I typically don't get to do this, so this is kind of a quote unquote therapeutic experience for me in terms of being able to recall experiences from the past.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing your journey. So let you go and enjoy the rest of the evening, and we'll stay in touch.
Yep, we will. Thank you. Take care.